This morning, we're going to review the 2024, of course, 2024 generally, and what's expected in 2025. Governance, democracy, and economy, among other things. In the studios, we've been joined by the country's Minister of Information and Civic Education, Chernor, and also Sidi Tunis, who is coming from the main opposition APC, is their National Publicity Secretary for the APC party. Also, we expected to be joined by Valor Edwin, who is a good governance campaigner. But first, gentlemen, it's a pleasure having you in the studios.
Thanks for having us. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy 2025.
First, we have a quick update on the Safe Motherhood Bill, as the government recently engaged with the Interreligious Council and other stakeholders on the bill. In the studios, we've been joined by the Deputy Minister 2 in the Ministry of Health, who is Dr. Mustafa. Dr. Mustafa, good morning. It's a pleasure having you. Good morning. So what's new about this bill?
Thank you. So I'm sure, at least I hope our listeners have been following the debates, the conversation, the engagements that we've had for the past couple of months. If you remember, in August, Cabinet approved the bill and we took it to Parliament in December. But prior to that, we've had several engagements with MPs, with other stakeholders, community people, to see how we can make the bill a document that's acceptable, at the same time achieving what we want to achieve, which is to reduce maternal mortality in the country. So after the first reading in Parliament, the Honourable Speaker sent us to Legislative Committee, invited position papers on this document, and we received about 20, many in support of the bill, 2 main ones from the religious leaders in the country, especially from the Interreligious Council. Based on that position paper, we've had engagements with them, several engagements, and we've made a lot of amendments to the bill to reflect the concerns that they raised in the position paper. So I will talk about the key changes that we're proposing, because again, the changes can only be made by Parliament. But the main area of concern is the issue of termination of pregnancy, which the bill, initial bill, proposed that any woman who, for any reason, didn't want to keep a pregnancy had the right to safe termination of pregnancy up to a certain number of weeks, 14 weeks of gestational age, and then also provided instances for when safe termination could be done. Now we've amended that to say safe termination of pregnancy can only be offered in exceptional circumstances. So when the woman's life is at risk, in the instances of rape or incest, or when there's a fetal malformation that's incompatible with life, as diagnosed by a certified medical professional. The other big issue was for minors who would provide consent for these minors. The initial bill talked about any responsible adult being able to accompany a minor to provide consent for them to seek any reproductive health service. Based on concerns from religious leaders and other people, we've amended this to say only parents, guardians, or people with parental authority over the minor. There was also some concerns about marital couples, with the woman having the right to seek termination without consent of the husband, and we've amended that to encourage shared responsibility in terms of making any reproductive health decision, such that for both partners, the spouse has the right to accompany them and be consulted on these decisions. Another big thing was any health provider who refused or discriminated against people for service provision could face penalty before in the old version of the bill, but we've amended that now to say health workers, for reasons such as religion or conscience, could refuse to provide certain services, especially safe termination of pregnancy, without facing penalties. They just have to refer the patient. And also, I want to quickly mention that even the amended bill is basically providing a very regulated way now of providing safe termination of pregnancy services, and also speaks to the penalties that people will face if they offer these services outside of those provisions. And the penalties are even more severe than what the original bill was proposing. So as a government, we've made so much of these changes, which, frankly, the original idea was to offer these services to solve the problem of unsafe abortions and other reproductive health problems that are killing our women and our girls right now. But we recognize that, there are religious contexts, there are moral contexts, and we've listened to the population, we've listened to the religious leaders, and we've amended this document so that we still have a bill that will save lives, that will promote equity, and will solve the problem of unwanted pregnancies from rape, incest, or when the mother's life is at risk, but at the same time is sensitive towards our religious and cultural context.
You are a doctor. What makes an abortion safe and unsafe?
So I'm very happy you asked that question, because again, many people have been asking about if we decriminalize abortion, would it still not result in complications? The big answer is emphatically no. So unsafe abortion is what is happening currently, and it's happening, there's unregulated amounts, very unsafe, because it's being performed in facilities that are not qualified and by people who are not qualified to provide those services. Safe abortion is when a woman gets termination of pregnancy services by a licensed, trained, certified, qualified health professional in an appropriate health facility that has been designated by the government to provide those services. And when it is done safely, you do not have complications or women dying from it, like what is happening currently.
I would perhaps want to understand, what is abortion?
I'm sorry?
What is abortion?
So when a woman terminates a pregnancy for whatever reason.
Could abortion also be taking a life? By this I mean the life of the baby, the life of the fetus.
Okay, so we don't, as health professionals and as a ministry, and I'm sure my colleague would also add that, Minister Siba, who's here, when we're trying to decriminalize abortion, it is not a life-for-life argument. We have a problem currently. Unsafe abortion is happening regardless, despite the law, and women and girls are dying.
That's you wearing the cap of the Deputy Minister of Health. But I'm asking you now, as a medical doctor, is abortion claiming a life?
So again, I am both a Deputy Minister and a medical doctor. So the answer is, I'm giving you the answer for both those perspectives. We currently have a problem, right? Unsafe abortion is happening. Yes, it's claiming the life.
That's not the question I was asking. I was asking, is abortion claiming a life?
Yes, I am agreeing with you. It's claiming the life of the unborn, yes. And it's also claiming the life of the women and the girls who are engaging in unsafe abortion.
So how then do we justify a life for a life? At any case, murder is involved.
I think you should look at it from the perspective of this issue is happening now in an unregulated fashion. When the bill is passed into law, it decriminalizes abortion. It says safe abortion under regulated circumstances. It will in fact reduce the number of abortions that are happening. We have the data. We've already seen that when this kind of law is passed in other countries, because the bill not only focuses on providing safe abortion services when necessary, it also focuses on preventing unwanted pregnancies through family planning, through health education. It results in reducing the number of abortions in the first place. There are instances,
Dr. Mustafa.
So again, it's saving lives both ways.
There are instances when people have been jailed for double murder in cases where they killed pregnant women. So some people, whether it's in Sierra Leone or some parts of the world, there are people who have had to face double sentence, double murder when they killed a pregnant woman. So it still brings us to safe or not. How do we justify taking a life for a life?
So, as a government, as a ministry, we're never justifying taking a life for a life. This is not what the bill is about. The bill is saying unsafe abortions are happening right now, and it's killing women and girls, even as you say, it's taking life of babies. What we're saying is put a law in place that regulates these unsafe practices that will reduce the number of abortions in the first place, saving the lives that you're talking about, but also prevent women and girls from dying unnecessarily. I mean, who doesn't want that? Who wants the status to continue wherein women and girls are dying in a very unregulated way, and the unborn babies are also dying, yes, in a very unregulated way? This bill is solving that problem. I think we're all on the same page. We should not be distracted from the issue that we're trying to solve.
Dr. Masako, you seem convinced that these moves will help to indeed solve the problem, but many do hold a diverse opinion as to same. Convince them. You seem very convinced as to the fact that this move that the government is taking will help solve the problem, but
yes.
many do hold diverse opinion.
I mean, it's a, first of all, the Minister of Information always says this is a democracy. And yes, I agree, this is a controversial topic. With any controversial topic, you will have people with views on opposing side. There are many people who have concerns, and there are many people who support the bill. I think I talked about our position papers that we received in Parliament when this bill was sent to Legislative Committee. We had 18, to be specific, 16 explicitly supporting the bill, and 2 with opposing views. So it's a matter of opinion whether people support or do not support the bill. We expected that. That is why we're engaging, and we're continuously engaging with people to see their concerns and address it. I also just want to point out that, yes, many people had some opposing views to the bill, but that was even the old version of the bill which we presented to Parliament about a month ago. Over the past 4 weeks, we've made so many amendments to this bill. You would see that all the provisions in the new bill that we're proposing addresses 90 or more than 90% of the concerns that have been raised by the public and by the Interreligious Council. When you compare what we're proposing right now with the position paper of the Interreligious Council, you will see that we've addressed all the concerns in the position paper in what we're proposing.
Dr. Mustafa, just as we let you go, are you now, when I say you, the government, are you now in agreement with the Interreligious Council? Have you arrived at a point of compromise where it's not one end being aggrieved, but both parties are satisfied? And what's the next stage of this bill?
Okay, so I cannot say that they've agreed at this point, because where we're at is they sent a position paper. We made amendments to the bill based on every aspect on the position paper we've addressed. We've had a meeting with them. We've put forward the proposed amendments and highlighted point by point on the position paper how we've addressed them. They asked for time to study these new amendments, and they've said they will get back to us as a government. But the meeting was very positive. We ended on a very positive note. They were very happy. They made comments of they're happy that the government has listened, and the government is a listening government, and they were confident that something good will come out of the bill.
Dr. Jelikato Masako, it's a pleasure having
Mustafa.
Mustafa.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Jelikato
Mustafa.
It's been an educative session.
Thank you.
We wish you all the best.
Thank you.
We'll follow through on this.
Most definitely. And now I'm back to Studio One, wherein we've been joined by the Minister of Information and Civic Education and Sidi Tunis. It's a pleasure again having the studios.
Always, thank you.
We'll soon be joined by Valon Edwin and our Studio 2. But first off, Siba, what's happening with regards governance and politics generally within?
Well, I think today is the 6th of January.
Sure.
It's an important day in the history of this country. It's important for us to take a moment to acknowledge our many compatriots that lost their lives and the sacrifices that we made together collectively as a country for what Dr. Mustafa was talking about, for democracy, for freedom, for the right to disagree, to have a passionate conversation about issues and find a common ground and a way forward. I think one of the issues that led to the war by the TRC report, the systematic discrimination against women and these laws that hold us back. The laws governing safe motherhood or abortion in this country are from 1861, 163 years ago. The law states that under no circumstance, even if the doctor says, and I know this, my sister here likes to talk about, is it life, is it not life? I like to not get into the moralistic aspect of the conversation, but here's the fact. 90,000 women in Sierra Leone will seek to terminate their pregnancy. That's the fact. Of those, a significant number will die from a cause that can be prevented. That's the fact. Majority of those that are dying are poor women who cannot afford it. every rich person in this studio perimeter who's listening to me, in the church, in the mosque, that needs to terminate their pregnancy, they know where to go, they will pay for it, and they will do it safe. The responsibility of a government is not to cast and impose our morals on the states, is to regulate, take care, and save lives. That's an oath President Bill took. That's why he supports the bill that says we must do everything we can to provide the option of safe termination, especially as the minister has done. In the cases of rape, incest, the life of the mother is at risk. Even the Interreligious Council's position paper states very clearly that they will support safe termination in the instances if it is meant to save the life of the woman. So I think it's important that when we have this conversation about whether it is live, whether it is not live, we are dealing with the realities. And I like to say, our first responsibility is to the citizens we have in Sierra Leone today. That's the responsibility of a state. And you know who are the citizens that are dying? Women. Poor, particularly poor women, including people in my family that I have buried, who have sought to terminate pregnancies in an unsafe way in the alleyways. That's the moral thing that this government is seeking to do. But there's a lot of bigger parts of the conversation, and some of it is, frankly, a distraction. But what we have done, what the government of President Bio has done, is to listen with respect, is to engage, is to amend, to reflect. Very good points that have been made, including here in this studio. People say, oh, well, maybe we don't agree with that. Why do you use this word? Why don't you leave exceptions for, and then some people say, you know what, we don't want, let us start at least from a position that says, if the life of the mother is at risk, and in these cases that we have pointed out where there's malfunction of the fetus, those are the things we have agreed on. Those are the things we are proposing. But back to your general point,
Chernor,
we
agree
just
or not,
celebrated.
there are perhaps more than these three, but there's a moral, there's a medical, there's a political, and perhaps other angles to the conversation that does not have to be just one perspective.
But that's what I'm saying. That's exactly why this government brought forth this law. When a government considers a legislation of this nature or a solution, we are moral people. We go to mosque and church. Cabinet includes His Excellency the President, who is a practicing Catholic, the Vice President, who is a Muslim. That's cabinet. And then it goes to government. We consider we all go to church and mosque, we consider every single one. But at the end of the day, there is a reason we are not governed by the Bible and the Quran in Sierra Leone. There is a reason. We as a state decided that no. The chief Archbishop is not the president or the speaker.
While it would be interesting, Chernor, to continue on this path,
I wanted to transition.
To also mention that perhaps the Bible and the Quran does govern us, because there are times when you go for your oath, you're taking oath with Bible or Quran. But let's look at,
it's very important.
Let's look at the.
This is not a theocracy.
So what did you take an oath with when you were sworn into office?
You take an oath.
How come even in the courts? How come even the courts?
I don't want to argue
you
with
swear on the Bible and the Quran before you come to give testimony.
Yeah, but there's a reason that you don't swear to uphold the Bible.
So while it is an interesting conversation we could carry, we could now utilize the airtime to actually focus on the topic, which is the year in review 2024.
Yeah, but I'm not going to allow you
to
shout over me and I don't respond. You swear to an oath.
The choice is yours. We could use the airtime and we focus on this conversation, or you use it to report to the public.
I am.
The 2024 in review on government activities.
I am. I'm waiting for you. You swear to an oath, you put your hand on the Bible and the Quran, and you swear by the Bible to uphold the Constitution. I'm a minister of civic education. I cannot sit here and allow you to tell the public that because you swear to the Bible and the Quran, you swear to allegiance to the Bible and the Quran. You swear, say, this is my belief system. That's why they ask you what you choose. And then you say, by this belief system, I swear to uphold the Constitution of Sierra Leone.
That's noted, Chernor. It's still open to how you interpret what that means and what anybody else can interpret that to mean.
Let us now move to the year.
So the year in review, 2024.
We just transitioned from, I think, one of the most peaceful Decembers we have seen in the history of this country, especially in the post-war period. People came into this country. We went about our businesses. We had very successful carnivals and festivals all across the country. The Ministry of Information hosted the first of its kind civic festival that brought together all arms of government across. We also saw that the beaches, people were all around, citizens came across from all over the world, all our flights operated, and people arrived in Sierra Leone and were in awe of the transformations that I think President Bio has invested in, including the beautiful airports that we have. I think citizens saw that now their movement and their transitions coming to the country was good. Last year, I think President Bio's speech at the beginning of this year, he looked at the year of delivery and said, last year was, consolidating and laying the foundation for the Big Five. 2025 is a year of bold action. It's a year when, as His Excellency has said, we're going to do big, bold things. We're going to, as a government, he's committed to ensuring that the Big Five platform that he has laid, we do those things in a big, in a bold, in a courageous way. That's what leadership is about. It's about saying where people don't want to go in the past, and so we're going to do a census to recount our country and make sure we will pursue the constitutional review process and bring it and build on the work that's been done by our colleagues on the other side in the APC over years and across multiple governments and move those forward. So those are the big, bold things we're looking at.
Before what we're looking forward to, what would you highlight as some of the most significant achievements of the government in the year 2024? Let's deal with the past before we head to the present and future.
Yeah, I think in terms of significant achievement, there are many. The fundamental achievements, back to the Constitution, the President's #1 task is security of the state, is to protect lives and property, is to ensure that the state is peaceful and citizens can go about their normal business. That's what's his oath, and that's what the Constitution gives him the duty to perform, and that's what he has done. As I just mentioned, that we just had a whole year where the security of the citizens of this country were guaranteed. In the political space, we also saw a return to normalcy. We came out from what I will say, the yawning effect of the last elections, and we went back to a position of political normalcy. We saw extraordinary commitment on the part of the political leadership of this country, led by His Excellency the President, and I must give credit as well to especially my colleague here on the other side of the APC for coming together and looking at, for example, the tripartite, and laying a foundation with over 80 recommendations for the kinds of transformation we want to see in this country, and the beginning of the implementation of all of those. We saw as well the stabilization of the economy. I think anybody who's paying attention will know that 2024, the economy was stable. We kept prices at minimal. We looked at things like fuel. We were able to not just keep the price at the reasonable level affordable for citizens, but we also made sure fuel was every time available. The basic goods were available for citizens. We have developed a transparent system of calculating the prices. We even had price decreases in the first time in the history of this country. And of course, when things move as well.
Not the first time, but yeah.
Well, for the very first time in a long time in this country, you can predict when there's going to be an increase and when there's going to be a decrease. So we also saw that in terms of just prices. And now you take, for example, food inflation. We saw again that food prices continue to go down. We saw our production levels continue to increase in terms of food. Rice production continue to increase. Onions, things like basic goods that were not in the market. We saw that we now have, again, increase in production. And this is President Bio's flagship. We saw a consolidation of gains, of course, in human capital development. President Bio has continued to invest in education, again, in an unprecedented fashion. I think no president has done as much as President Bio has done on this issue of education in the history of this country. I don't think we can argue about that. In terms of my own ministry, public information and civic education, I think I was listening to a show the other day. Citizens will say, even on this safe model bill, one day you hear something, the next day you say there's been a meeting, the next day you have access to the information. We have done that because President Bio's commitment to transparency and openness in government is unprecedented. We conducted the highest number of town halls ever. All other government before us combined, we have done more town halls than them from 1961 to today, in just this past year, because we're bringing the government to the people. So that's also democracy. We're consolidating. It's not enough. We have to do more and build more on all of that. You look at the area of jobs. You look at the area of land reforms. You look at the area of gender equality and women's empowerment. You look at the area of advancing child's rights. So you look at the area of consolidating an open government and a governance system. I think on each and every one of those fronts. MCC was another big thing. We have an energy crisis in this country. I think Dr. Kande Yomkela, who is the head of the leader of the sector, has said very publicly that there's a crisis on the energy sector. But to solve that problem, you need a big vision, you need a right kind of investment, and you need to be able to now lay the framework. What we did with that was we approached the United States government, we went through a period, we were able to meet all of the benchmarks, and we've qualified despite a lot of challenges, and we've now signed an agreement, and we are starting the process of a preliminary to lay the foundation for a $480 million investment into just a major sector in this country. That's a huge progress that happened last year. Internationally, the reputation of our country has been enhanced. We now sit in the Security Council. We chaired the Security Council. Our presidents went there and hosted a whole international segment. Before, we were on the table on the Security Council. Sierra Leone was being discussed. Now, Sierra Leone sits there discussing matters of international concern. So the reputation of the country continues to be enhanced because of the visionary leadership of the President View. So I can talk about every single sector over the past year. We have seen consolidation, and what I like to say, don't look at station, you look at trajectory. Not Usa you dey, but Usa you dey head. On every single one of these issues we talk about, whether it's the economy, whether it's feed salon, whether it's youth employment, whether it's education, we are headed in the right direction.
Siba, respectfully, you did mention that the economy has been stable over time, and even the cost of commodities seem very stable. Sidi, do you share a similar opinion? The realities in country?
Well, absolutely not. I mean, clearly, there are areas where we have made gains as a nation. I would say in terms of probably stabilizing the foreign exchange. Yes, for a long period of time, we've seen the foreign exchange stable in terms of the cost of Leone to dollar. You know, that has been stable for quite a long period of time. But to say that we are seeing reduction in the prices of commodities, or to say that the economy is stable, no. We still continue to experience rise in prices of basic commodities, making it unaffordable for citizens, you know, across this country. We're seeing continuous rise in transportation, of course, and we're seeing also quality drops in certain areas, especially, for example, when it comes to communication. You will notice that quite recently, the quality in terms of mobile communication is dropping. You'll be on the phone and then you just experience call drops, for example, and you also experience the rise in the cost of your communications. So these are all areas that we see we are not doing well, we are not improving. The economy is not stable, the economy is struggling. If you look at even the recent notice from the World Bank, we are being warned as a country as far as our economy is concerned. I think you know, we have to also focus on the expenditure. You know, what we have always stated is the fact that what we are generating as a country is not enough to service our need. You know, and we continue to, you know, establish institutions. We establish embassies, for example, that continue to add the burden already on the economy, you know, and we cannot afford these things. So we resort to loans, taking more loans internally and externally. And these loans also come with interests that are exorbitantly high. So all of these are putting burden on the economy, and it's becoming unaffordable for us. In terms of governance generally, or democracy, yes, we spend quite a lot of time working together to ensure that we consolidate our democracy and increase the confidence of the people, again, first through the Agreement for National Unity and then the work of the Tripartite Committee. I think our focus now should be, we have to be honest and sincere enough to ensure that we are able to fully implement the 80 plus recommendations from the tripartite committee. And also we have to be very much transparent and engaging and involving when it comes to the whole issue of constitutional review, because these are key to making sure that we consolidate our democracy and continue to increase the confidence of the people in our democratic process. But there are so many areas that need attention. The Feed Salon project, for example, that is the flagship project of the government. We don't see much investment into that, and even where the minister is saying we have seen increased productivity when it comes to our local produce, but that is not being reflective in the market, and that is not being reflective when it comes to the prices of those local produce. Because, I mean, if you look at demand and supply, if supply increases, you know, prices, you know, are expected to lower. But that is not the case. If supply increases and prices are high, then of course something is wrong, and that is really what we continue to see. You know, that was the case for 2024. That was the case before that, and you know, so as far as on our side, the perspective is that our economy is still struggling.
What will then the APC as an opposition prefer for the government? I mean, the moves to undertake at this moment to see a change in that narrative.
We have been very much engaging in several ways. If you notice, Parliament is one. Our parliamentarians have been very busy. But of course, on our side as an opposition, we have been having our monthly press conferences wherein we profile alternative solutions, wherein also we recommend to government as to how we feel we should go about, you know, addressing some of these issues. We have extensively, for example, spoken about energy. We have stated repeatedly that the contract, for example, with Car Power is not sustainable. It makes no sense for us to continue to pay $7 million plus every month to Car Power for 60 megawatt electricity that we are not getting from them. Because clearly, if we get 60 megawatt electricity from Car Power as it is in the contract, we should be able to have considerable, you know, amount of electricity daily in the western area. But as you know, electricity is being rationed, you know, in Freetown, for example. So it means whatever we are paying to them, we are not getting what we are paying for. So that is something that needs to be reviewed. That alone is putting a lot of burden on the economy of this country, and we just cannot afford that. And because of that singular move, the interest rate also is accumulating on that, and that means also government continues to resort to taking more loans to address the interest you know, that accrues on the car path. So that is one area we have to review. We also have to review our expenditure as a nation. We are not generating enough to service the amount of expenses that we are undertaking as a government. You know, so that is one area we have to review the number of jobs that we continue to create, the travel expenses for government officials. All these are all areas that we can look at to ensure that we are able to minimize them, so we save money to service more important areas like healthcare, education, agriculture, you know, which are key to making sure that the people of this country are guaranteed better and quality lives.
It's time we go to our studio 2 and join Valnoa Edwin, who is a good governance campaigner. Valnoa, it's a pleasure having you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, and to the viewers as well.
You've listened carefully from the guests in our main studios. As a good governance campaigner, how reflective are these opinions, I mean, from the side of government and that of the opposition in terms of governance, democracy, and that of the economy in country.
So again, Happy New Year to the viewers. And I think today is January 6th, and for those of us who were in Freetown a couple of years ago, today is not a very memorable day. I was also a victim because on the 9th of January, my house was completely burnt down, but we thank God that we're alive. And I've started the conversation with that because I think sometimes we forget where we're coming from. Because if we remember where we're coming from, some of the conversations that we're still having, we'll be having a different conversation. In terms of reflecting what happened in 2024, it's like you need to have like a baseline. What did we decide as a country that we wanted to do? What sort of benchmarks did we set ourselves to achieve? And whether we have that long-term vision to say, this is where we want to see Sierra Leone in the next 20 years or in the next 15 years in this area and in that area, and what are the small steps that we have taken that we can pat ourselves on the back as a nation to say, fine, in 2024 we have laid this foundation. So in another 10, 15, 20 years, this is where we'll be as a nation. And I think that's the missing gap. Our developmental trajectory is always built by when a particular political party wins an election. We start going back to the first lane, to start the race. And so it becomes difficult. It becomes a struggle as a nation to be able to say we have actually achieved this. Having said that, last year, yes, we have been able to have certain legislations, especially the gender-responsive legislations enacted. That doesn't mean implementation will solve most of the problems that the Act intends to achieve. There was some level of security and stability, and good thing that we can all sit together like this. But I think there are some challenges we need to reflect on as well. Maybe freedom of expression seems to be problematic. We've seen a number of arrests, a number of issues that have happened because of what people have said. The issue around the economy, the issue around access to basic services, the electricity and the water supply. And it's troubling that we keep on going back over the years under this same conversation about electricity and water supply. And why we need to have concrete solutions to them. We have the big five. We develop national development agendas. But if the enablers, which I think the things that should propel and would have multiplier effect, which is having sustainable energy, ensuring that we have adequate water supply, ensuring that we have good road infrastructure. If these key things are not at the state where it's supposed to support the economy, boost private sector development, and ensure the ordinary citizen on a day-to-day basis, the person that makes the ginger beer, that sells ice, that does all these basic things, can have the opportunity to engage in their livelihood in that structured manner, then we'll continue to have this conversation, and the development plans and the things that we really aim to achieve, not that we'll not achieve them, but we'll still be taking the baby steps which we have been taking over the years. And therefore, we are thinking that government should sit and ensure that there are sustainable plans to ensure we are all jumping around the MCC, which is also a good thing. But I was one of the CSOs who had a meeting with them, and they have said we are supporting in terms of the infrastructure. It doesn't necessarily mean at the end of that, if as a nation we have not put our plans in place, we are going to have sustainable energy. And we see over the years the many interventions that have been made regarding energy, and we're still not getting it right. So we are hopeful that as a nation we can sit and have a blueprint that goes beyond a political party term of office, goes beyond a government, but as a nation, this is where we want to be in the next 10, 15, 20 years, which is more sustainable.
As someone who's been following these issues over time, would you say Sierra Leone has a structure like many of the countries we've seen, say in the West and even within Africa, that speaks specifically to its development.
Come again, I didn't get it.
Do you think we have a structure that will guide the country's development path? Yes, you mentioned we have, over time you see a lot of launching of programs. They will say this is the blueprint, but you hardly see the country follow this blueprint stricto sensu. Do we have as a country? Do we have a structure?
So what we have missed, and I hope with time we'll be able to harness, is something I've said several times over the years, is what's that vision for Sierra Leone? You go to a country like Ghana, because they had someone like Kwame Nkrumah, they have an ideology. And in a number of African countries, they have had leaders that have instilled an ideology and a vision to them. So regardless of the challenges they will have, that's the gravitating force. We don't have that. And over the years, I don't think we have really had built that ideology that would propel us as a nation, as I've said to say, in the next 20 years, in the next 25 years, this is where we want to be. Now we are a country of firsts. Every time a government comes in, we are the first to do this, we are the first to do that, we are the first to do that. So it's like going back to the drawing, but we are not building on what others have done. And that is what other countries have done. They have built on what others have done so that they can grow. But I always use this analogy of like you're running a race. If I hand the baton to you, if you think I've not handed it well, what you need to do is to run faster, run better. But what we do, we go back and start the race. Whilst other countries are going forward. So everyone wants to claim, I'm the first to do this, I'm the first to do that. And that does not help in any way that can support a country to develop. A country cannot develop in that form. We need to build that ideology that this is a Sierra Leone for all of us. This is where we want to be as a nation. And as a people, we have to push those that we give authority to say, you have to follow this blueprint. Again, I have mentioned in 2011 or thereabout, we had a transformation conference. And what that was speaking to was how do we build a blueprint in terms of our developmental agenda. What happened to that? But
the Ministry of Planning seems to, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the Ministry of Planning, Sierra Leone does have a national development agenda. I think we have a plan for up to maybe 2030 or 2035. 2030. Doesn't that suffice as a national plan?
No, it doesn't. Because again, having been in this space for like 25 years, every time a government comes in, there is a new plan. And every time a new government comes in, they sort of start all over again. They'll start telling you, this is the first time this is happening. This is the first time this is happening. And when you go back to say, oh, there was an initiative. Yeah, a few initiatives are taken on board, but they are not taken with the level of interest and passion that would ensure that it takes us to another level. We have the free healthcare for under 5s, etc. It's still ongoing, but we are still talking about the high level of infant mortality and all that surrounds it. Why? So if we examine that, we would realize that the passion, the interest that started that initiative, that by now we should be able to see some results, because it doesn't happen in 5 years, 10, 15 years.
But the results are that Sierra Leone has made progress. The numbers have decreased. It's on a downward trajectory.
So yes, that is what we gather. But when you interface and you actually visit facilities and you actually engage certain practitioners, you realize that they're struggling and there is still a challenge. Again, it comes back to what I said. It's about what are the targets you have set as a nation. So again, it's not that you have not achieved anything. We are still taking these baby steps. But as a nation, and with the resources that we have, we should be able to do more. We should be able to achieve more than we are currently achieving.
Let's talk about the collaborative efforts between the ruling government and that of the opposition. What sort of a picture does it paint for our democracy as we speak?
I think it's a troubling time. It's a troubling time in the sense that the focus has been within maybe the past year or so much on the elections that there have not been actual focused debates in terms of the two of them discussing about, how do we move this country forward. And I think maybe now it's a new year, and it's about a year and 6 months, 18 months after all of this, I think we need to start focusing on how do we build Sierra Leone? How do we have a consensus? Being in the opposition does not mean you oppose everything. And you don't say we are the government in waiting. So you are waiting to see that this government fails and then, okay, I'm going. There's no Santa Claus or magic wand. But you can support, and that's what we do as civil society. It's not about being opposition or being support of a government. It's about proposing, helping government to see alternative views, ensuring that other voices are heard that will enrich the discussion, so that when you are engaging in a developmental agenda, you know you have considered all the different options that would be the best for the nation. And that is why when you do that, in the next 10, 15 years, we all feel part of that process. And when a government comes in, if a new government comes in, they don't think, this is not my idea, so I wouldn't be supportive of it, and you want to start all over again. So they need to be having that conversation, and I know sometimes they do, but a lot of things that they do on the side needs to be in the open, in the public, so that everyone can feel a part and everyone can support. So it doesn't mean, now this government do am, not we own government do am. I cannot see myself affiliating with this initiative because it's not my government. Every government is a government. Every government that sits is the government of every citizen of this country. Everybody that sits here, the current government is our government. So we have to support them. We need to have that healthy conversation that will help to enrich issues that they want to undertake. And they also have to open that space to allow even alternative views, even if you call it dissenting opinions, they have to open up that space where you can have alternative views, dissenting views, and you see how, and that would enrich when you make the final decision that I've had concerns and I've taken them on board.
And Valnar, the conversation on progress and how we can grow as a nation had at some point as well factored in roles of various MDAs in terms of collective responsibility in addressing issues in the country. But what we've also seen over the years is that some of these institutions do not perhaps take that drive or call or push as seriously as should. An example of that could be, we saw during last year that the PCMH hospital had some issues, and a doctor was very voice-forward about it. She went public with it. Luckily, it attracted the attention of some people, some philanthropists, and a generator was provided. And we know the absence of electricity in such a place, for example, poses life-threatening risks to mothers and their babies. We have never seen EDSA apologize, but EDSA could not power a radio station where the First Lady had an interview. They made a conscious effort to apologize to the First Lady publicly. How do we get there, where institutions understand the people, including the layman, the ordinary man, the uneducated person who does not reside in Freetown, in big towns, matters, and they are the bosses?
So again, a culture that I hope over time will change is this affiliation. When institutions or individuals are appointed into certain public offices, there seems to be a lot more interest in satisfying a political party or group of people, rather than understanding that you are there to serve the people of Sierra Leone, and that even all the facilities you have is not being paid for or provided for by a single individual or a few group of people, but the simple taxpayer, the people selling at the market, those in the restaurants, those in the supermarkets, the teachers, the police officers. That's where the money comes from that gives you the vehicle, that pays for your per diem, that renovates your office, because we need you to deliver for us. So unfortunately, over the years, a couple of people, not all of them, but a good number of them, pay more attention to party people, party affairs, politics, rather than understanding that you are there in that office based on the will of the people during an election. They've put a government in place, and you're an agent of the state, and you're supposed to serve that ordinary Sierra Leonean. So until we get that sort of mindset change, and I was thinking to myself, why do we have all these, over time I usually think, why do we have all these challenges with public officials? In fact, I was told the house that got burnt at Brook Street, I don't know how true, it was alleged that they had some power issue, and that resulted in the fire. So we were thinking maybe we should see some apology or something from the state institution. That never happens unless it relates to somebody in a public office or somebody holding a party, something. And we need to move away from that. If we don't do that, you will find that the institutions will continue to be weak. They'll not be able to function very well. And it comes back to what I'm saying. When somebody comes in, they start all over again, saying, okay, now I've been appointed, failing to realize that there might have been a strategic plan, there might have been some ideas, good ideas, that you need to follow up with, because you are serving a people. You are not serving a party, you are not serving a regime, but you are there to serve the nation. And your contribution at every point in time continues to build. Now we are all admiring Rwanda. Okay, yes, they have had a single president over time. But I think when they started, they had a conflict, and they put a blueprint in place, and they've been following through. Countries were all jumping to go to the US and the UK and all of that. They have a blueprint, they have an ideology. Not everything about them is perfect, but they have focused that when there are challenges, let's follow this ideology, let's follow this vision that we have as a nation so that we can grow. And when state institutions, the individuals who man these institutions, the individuals who are in these institutions understand that we are there to serve the people of Sierra Leone and not a regime, definitely we'll see vast difference.
Siba, we noticed during the festive period, most of the public servants, say for instance the nurses and many others, didn't receive their salaries. Is it a reflection of the current state of the country's economy?
This is a perfect example of where truth matters and where we need to have a frank conversation about what we are as a country. I really like the points that Valnora was making about an open society, about a democracy, about the need to engage, okay? The Ministry of Finance, by the way, since President Bill has been in power, okay? Since salaries have been paid on time, almost 100% of the time. It's very important.
A reflection of now first
one. Hold on, I'm not saying I will force, okay, but we all live in this country. I have been here all my life. I know this country. My parents worked and lived here. My mom was a public school teacher. My father was a public school teacher. Here, all their life. My mom taught for almost 40 years, okay? I know for years, government has had challenges paying salaries. Not this government. Paid on time. Everything, okay? The transition into a digital system. And the commitments, by the way, it's a culture that people are paid. We seek to pay people in time for Christmas. That is like a bonus. It's like a privilege you're doing. Everybody was paid before the end of the month. Important. Everybody was paid as is supposed to be before the end of the month. There were delays, including us, because there was a technical glitch that the government mentioned through the payment system with the switch. Keep in mind, we're moving to the switch, which was an unfortunate technical glitch, which I have publicly said that we apologize for those people. But we didn't delay paying them because they were all paid within the time that government is committed to pay you. December salary, I know we all think about it as December salary is for Christmas, December salary is for December, it's actually for January. That's the culture. So important, when you say it's state of the economy, there's a fact, there's the propaganda. The fact is, everybody, as government has done, was paid from day one, all through the month, including in December, in time before the end of the month. There were delays between the Christmas period and New Year, where some people, including me here, did not receive our salaries, but we did before the end of the month.
What was the problem?
Really important. I just said it was a technical glitch. They use a payment system, a switch payment system, through which that money goes through. I don't know all the technical details. What I know is that the money is paid, as you know, from the central bank. It goes into the system. There's a switch system now that they use. It's electronic transfer. There was a technical glitch that led to delays. But everybody was paid.
Some banks
before the end of the month.
Some banks got their, some of the people for some of the banks got their salaries in time. Others at some other banks couldn't.
That's exactly why there's a technical glitch. So the technical glitch emanates from the banks and the movements from central bank to commercial bank, depending on where you are banking. It's a simple, yes, it's an unfortunate problem. People are looking forward to getting their monies on time. We empathize with that, but they somehow, again, my brother said the economy, it's true, we're not where we're supposed to be. Last year,
is that also a situation, Chernor, with the nurses, doctors, and everyone
inflation was 15%.
Was that a situation that needed an apology to be issued to the public?
I have rendered it. We have said it publicly. In our ministry, we have said it publicly. We said we apologize to people who have not. But it's important to separate what your entitlement is from what a favor is. To say that they are paying you now, you're not, this is not like, you can't sue government and say they not pay me the 24. You can't sue because it's not a legal entitlement you have. It's a provision. Government is going to do that so that you know, because we know people need that to enjoy their holidays. But it's not a legal entitlement. It's important to separate those two. And we have said, yes, we're sorry because that's not our goal. Again, President Bill, since he's been in power, people are paid in the time when the economy was in the most difficult, in COVID and everything. One thing this government has gotten right, give them credit for, before I joined. One thing, salaries are paid on time.
Chernor, the statistics you've mentioned in terms of inflation seem more in theories and not
My brother, don't go there. Are you an economist?
And not in
inflation is not calculated by theory. Inflation is calculated by institutions. The World Bank statistics say you cannot subject inflation to your opinion.
I need not to be
inflation is an empirical fact. It's not based on your opinion.
You need not to be an economist.
Yeah, but
sometimes.
no, you can't say inflation is based on how you think. Inflation is inflation. You can say that the effect of it, that you're not benefiting or you're not feeling yet the full effect of it, that I can agree with.
Again,
but we cannot debate the inflation number.
Siba,
it is there.
Does it resonate with the realities?
Yes, because inflation is inflation. And when you talk about realities, you're talking about now, well, you need those. How do you measure the realities? First, you need those macroeconomic numbers to change. So the reason why we track inflation is because it has economically, now I'm not an astute economist, but I can tell you, I got one at economics at WASC and I did it for my first degree, that when you have macroeconomic numbers at that level, now move in the right direction, it necessarily translates into overall improvement across the economy. That is the reason we track it. That is the reason it's not just tracked by us, it's tracked globally. That's the reason World Bank looks at it as an economic indicator to think about how much loans they give us, what's our financial program with them. By the way, last year we qualified for both our IMF program, our World Bank program, and for the first time, the European Union is now giving direct budgetary support. You know why they do that? They look at those numbers. Are things perfect? Of course not, and I agree with Auntie Valnora that there are big problems we need to address at this country. We need to come together, we need a national overarching vision, all those things she talks about. But right now, again, I say, not station, trajectory. Not Usa with the head. Inflation was 56%. Okay. It's 15%. That's a fact.
Government has made several promises, one of which is to provide over 500,000 jobs, 500,000 jobs for
at the end of the 5 years.
The people of this country, of which I'm one of those people that the government promised.
You already have a job, so.
Of course, perhaps you know I need, perhaps I'll need another job.
That's fine.
Yes. But again, Siba, we've seen frantic efforts from the government in terms of course, efforts that have been put in place. One of which is that of from the Ministry of Youth. We've seen the keke, we've seen bikes being provided, and recently the boats. There was a video on social media. I just need confirmation as to the reality of that video. Is it authentic?
Of course. The event happened in November and I was there. I was actually the chair of that event. At that event, His Excellency the President commissioned a major set of initiatives. One of them was about 50 kekes brand new. They were there. The videos have been put forward. Secondly, there were boats, over 50 boats that were locally manufactured and constructed here. All the machines were there, and that was the reality. Her Excellency, the First Lady, gave out checks to over 50 female-led organizations. I was chair of that event. And then, at the end of the event, when President had commissioned everything up where we were at the car park, he went down to the beach, and there was one of the boats that were there. This is one of the boats that had been used leading up. So you have to understand one thing, okay? When a project is done in governments, to get the time of the president, sometimes you apply, even as ministers, the president needs to come commission this. It takes 3, 4, 5, 6 months for you to get the president. Doesn't mean the project waits. That boat had been used, rain-meter, sand-meter, this, that, but it was part of the project. Locally constructed, okay? It looked like it was used because it was used. It had been moved from Tumbo all the way. One of the beneficiaries brought the boats. That's what you saw there. Now, that event happened in November. This is the perils of fake news today, okay? An event happened in November. The pictures were there. The news was there. People who were there saw that there was nothing fake about the 50 boats. In fact, we had the people that came forward and gave their testimonials, the kekes, the women, the people that received the grants and all that. 2 months later, somebody picks out one short video and makes a whole story about it in order to discredit a project and an initiative that the government is doing. That's part of the reality. I don't blame the people for doing it.
More like a boat that has been used for over 2 years. But have you seen the keke within, even the Freetown municipality?
My brother.
Over 200 kekes.
100% yes. Not just in Freetown. The kekes were distributed, in fact, at that event fairly. AYV covered it, by the way. Wall to wall, live. You should go back and look for it. It's in November.
I edited that script, by the way.
Thank you. So you know it. So you should be here confirming it.
But have you seen the kekes?
100%.
The public, they've been raising a lot of
No,
funds.
sir. The kekes have been distributed, not just in Freetown, but all across. That was one of the things President Bill spoke about that day. The fact that these were distributed across the country with no regard for political party, tribe, and any other consideration. So young people who applied. Young people came forward and gave testimonials, okay? And by the way, this is part of a scheme that makes sure that these young people, they pay back some of those resources and it's used and plowed back so we can expand and provide more opportunities for more and more young people. The people who are benefiting from those, they're real. That's the reality of it. And yes, you can have a conversation about the challenges we have. And we do have real challenges. And there's so many problems. And I can assure you, President Bill doesn't sleep at night. He thinks about these problems. He's engaging, he's seeking. That's why he travels. That's why he's seeking. That's why we've just attracted about $1 billion over the past year alone from all the resources that we got to support particularly food security and our energy transformation plans. That's why I hear Madam Edwin speak about the lack of an overarching plan in the energy sector. If you attended the last press conference that Kande Yomkala went with at our ministry, he outlined a series of huge plans, short, medium, and long term, to finally transform. And he said it's going to be patient. It's going to require patience. So are we doing what we can to solve these problems? I can assure you, His Excellency the President, he's put together the right team. He's focused on solving these problems, not for him. He's not running for re-election. He's been very clear about that. His time is going to expire, but for this country, because that's what he's committed to.
As we try to wrap up this segment, Sidi, Valnora did mention lots, but one that I think I picked up is the fact that we seem not to be having a constructive opposition, but yet we have one that waits on the ruling government to fail and then banks on those failures to be re-elected into government. Are we having a constructive opposition?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think that is the case. No one wishes for any government to fail. You know, it goes both ways, like she rightly mentioned. I mean, the opposition will seek to engage government, but government also has to be willing to create the space and to even, you know, be able to listen or take into consideration proposals from the opposition. You know, always having to bulldoze, even in terms of passing bills through parliament, you know, it's not the right way to push this nation forward. And for us, I think we have been doing all we can to ensure that we continue to have continuous engagement with government in terms of seeking the interest of the people of this country, in terms of doing what we could to ensure that we see the progress and development of Sierra Leone, which is why the past year or so, we were able to even work together in terms of setting the tripartite committee agenda, setting the agreement for national unity. Now we are discussing the implementation and of the recommendations from the tripartite committee, and even where committees have been set up where we disagree, we have been able to communicate that. So it is all up to government, to now take into consideration what our contributions have been and what our contributions will continue to be as far as pushing this nation forward. But of course, we cannot wish for any government to fail, or we cannot wish to see the lack of progress or development of this country. That is not our job as opposition. Our job is to constructively engage, to criticize where we have to criticize, or to critique where we have to critique. But at the same time, we are also responsible to ensure that we see the progress and development of this country. At the end of the day, the opposition makes up the citizenry of this nation. If the prices of commodities are high, it is not only government supporters that will suffer. The opposition supporters will also suffer. If we have lack of energy in our country, we all, bear the brunt of it. So that is why we all have to work collectively to ensure that we are able to solve the problems that we are faced with on a regular basis.
Gentlemen and a lady, this conversation would not end today, obviously. We would have to drag this conversation over the next week or so to be able to delve into perhaps all of the issues or all of the important issues. But this is where we would have to end today's edition of Wake Up Sierra Leone.